All right, this is a short introduction on having an interpreter in the classroom. You would have an interpreter in the classroom for a variety of different reasons, but the main reason is there's now a deaf student in the class and they use the interpreter services. So this is a short orientation to talk about roles and responsibilities and also to make a smooth transition into the normal school year. This is a slide on what an interpreter does. So officially the interpreter is in the classroom to ensure full access to communication and information. That's going to be the majority of the work that you see the interpreter doing. They're going to be using sign language up in the front of the room so the deaf student can access the information visually. The interpreter also is able to provide information on how the student is doing in the student's IEP meetings, whether it's talking about language preferences, or behaviors that they're noticing, and also to ensure that the student is understanding the coursework. The interpreter also works between American Sign Language and English. This is generally the case, however, this is not always the case. When you just say sign language, that's a pretty umbrella term, and there's a few different things that could be under sign language. There's American Sign Language, which is its own separate language in itself, and there's also things such as transliteration, C, which stands for Signed Exact English, and cued speech. These are different styles of sign language. Some of them are original in their own sense, and some of them are English only in a visual manner on the hands. So it all kind of depends on what the student is using and what they're most comfortable with. This is a little diagram to kind of show or to give a visual aid of who the responsibility is on as far as the learning goes in the classroom. As you can see, towards the bottom, you have the elementary setting and middle school setting. The student doesn't have a lot of responsibility there. It's really on the interpreter to do a lot of behavior modification, to do a lot of prompting the student so they know how to use the interpreter and they understand that they need to be looking at the interpreter in order to pay attention. But since we're in the secondary setting, the interpreter's responsibility is more and more only in the classroom, and the outside additional responsibilities such as note-taking, that's on the student. Really, when you get to the secondary and post-secondary level, you can see that the interpreter does not have a lot of responsibility, and the student does. It's on the student to come to class prepared every day, ready to learn, and to do the prep work so they're ready for the lesson. The student's responsibility is to inform the teacher when they don't understand a topic. They might not understand because, like a normal student, normal hearing student, they don't understand the content. It could be an issue in the interpretation, but really it's on the student to advocate for themselves at this level and talk about how it's their responsibility to make sure that they're understanding the content at hand. The student's also supposed to monitor their own behavior. A deaf student does not mean, or having a deaf student does not mean that you're going to have a student with behavioral issues. It's really on an individual basis. There could be behavioral issues, but those are a separate issue, and you should deal with those like you would any other hearing student. Just go up and reprimand the student as you see appropriate, and the interpreter will take care of making sure that your message is being conveyed. The student's also supposed to advocate for their own ability to access communication. Typically in the younger grade levels, the deaf students will sit up at the front of the classroom so they can see the interpreter. If the student decides that they don't want to sit at the front of the classroom, that's fine. It's really on them to make sure that they're sitting in a visual path for the interpreter. As well as some students do have some residual hearing and can work off of lip reading, so they may look at the teacher and then use an interpreter to fill in the gaps. But when you get to the secondary level, that job is one that the student needs to take on, and it's not on the interpreter. Teachers' responsibilities. Teachers should talk directly to the deaf student. You don't need to look at the interpreter. Also, if a teacher could provide information or provide the interpreter with any information before class. Lesson plans, an outline for what you're going to be doing, any PowerPoints that you're going to be using. When the interpreter understands what's going to be happening in class that day, it's easier for them to communicate the information to the deaf student. So overall, that's something that's really important and helps the interpreters in the classroom. Another thing to keep in mind is trying to use visual tools when possible. This is stuff such as captioning on videos, pictures when it's appropriate, and writing something on the board. By simply writing something on the board, it creates a tangible visual object that the deaf student can look at and understand what's going on. Also understand that if the deaf student isn't taking in information visually, it means that they're not taking in information. So if you see a deaf student looking away, if you would normally prompt a hearing student to pay attention, you should do the same to the deaf student. Also, think of things such as explaining assignments as the students are doing reading. It's really hard for a deaf student to do something visually, such as read, and also try and take in information about explaining an assignment. So trying to limit the multitasking that goes on in the room when it comes to explaining things such as that. Here's a couple of the assisted listening devices that a deaf student might have. They also might not have any assisted listening devices and may rely solely on the interpreter. If you can see in the upper right-hand corner, we have a cochlear implant. These are interesting. There's actual implant inside the skull. The downside to these is residual noise can really be an issue for a deaf student, and it's hard to distinguish voices from other noises such as music. So keep that in mind if you want to play music in the classroom, or if you want to do something that has a lot of noise in it. A student with a cochlear implant is really going to have a hard time distinguishing your voice from the music. Not to say that you can't do activities such as this, but more stop the music before you're going to explain something else. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, this is an FM system. FM systems are something where the information is transmitted directly to the hearing aid from the FM transmitter that a teacher will typically wear around their neck. And then if you look at the bottom two pictures, the bottom left is a common image of a hearing aid. That's typically what you'll see. It could use an FM system, which is nice because it really cuts out on that residual noise, or it could just pick up on all the noise around. And then in the lower right, there's something called a BAHA, and that's a bone implant hearing aid. So really what's important is to understand what your student needs on an individual basis and be prepared to adapt so they can access the learning just as any other hearing student would be able to. If you have any questions, I have some resources for you. There's the CPC, that's a Code of Professional Conduct, and if you have any question on what an interpreter actually does. As well as talking to me, you can go online, and this is the Code of Ethics that all interpreters follow. In addition to that, I've also added a link for the Educational Interpreting Standard Practice paper. So this is what the interpreter's governing body really has decided is the role of the interpreter, and it guides us on how to do our job. I also added a website for some online teacher resources on how to include a deaf student into the room. This is a very good interactive website that can really do a lot in educating and helping understand what the deaf student needs. As well as this link is to an essay done by a UW-Madison student on research all about how to include a deaf student into a room. As well as all of these, you can also contact me at any time. I would ask that you would do it sometime before or after class when I'm in the classroom interpreting. It's really important that I stick to that job and stick to that role. However, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has at any other time before or after class. Thank you very much.